7 o'clock, we will call to order the regular meeting of the Clarkston Community Schools Board of Education. If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business tonight, we have a new board member who is joining us, Mr. Mike Clark, who was elected last November, and it is my great pleasure at this time to administer the oath of office to him. So, Mr. Clark, if you could please rise. And repeat after me, please. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Member of the Board of Education
of the office of Member of the Board of Education
of Clarkston Community Schools
of Clarkston Community Schools
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Item 1.6 is our roll call. Mrs. McLean, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. McGinnis. Here. Mr. Heyer.
Here.
Mrs. Love. Here. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mrs. Egan. Here. Mrs. Crane.
Here.
Mr. Neal.
Here. You're all here, and we will proceed. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not to be considered a public community hearing. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in agenda items 3 and 9. Item 2 is approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion's made and supported. Mrs. McLean, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Heyer.
Yes.
Mrs. Crane.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Egan.
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis.
Yes.
Mrs. Love. Yes. Mr. Neal.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you. Item 3 is the first opportunity for citizens to address the board. Again, under this item, item 3.1, you can address the board on any topic that is on tonight's agenda, which is being displayed behind me. And then under item 9, you're welcome to address the board on any topic. When making comments, please state your name and address. Direct your comments here to the board president. Each person may speak for up to 2 minutes, and per our established procedures, the board will not respond to questions or interact with the speaker during public comment, although we may refer the matter to our administration for follow-up. Mrs. Mahoney has told me there is no one that has signed up to address the board on an agenda topic, and again, under item 9, you'll have the opportunity to address the board on any topic. Item 4 is our superintendent update. Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, President Need. First order of business is to welcome Mr. Mike Clark on behalf of our school district, our administration, and our staff. I know I can speak for everyone. We're excited to have you aboard and looking forward to working with you. So congratulations. Welcome aboard. Next piece, a big week for welcoming in our new kindergartners and young fives in the school district and their families on Wednesday night. As it's set right now on February 12th at 6:30 at Clarkston High School. We're hoping to have a big show up. We've been doing our best to broadcast it out, but again, if you're listening to this broadcast, you know of somebody in our community that is of kindergarten age and their families, please come on Wednesday night. It's a great night, not only of information, but you really get a feel and a sense of the vibe that is Clarkston Community Schools. So thank you. Next, this Friday, starting this Thursday, the CHS Drama Club production of Hello Dolly begins. It's going to go through the weekend. I want to invite everybody out, and I just want to say a quick piece for the students that are involved. We do a lot of celebrations for our students that are on the athletic fields and robotics and so many different ways that Clarkston kids show they're smart. I encourage everyone in the community for a nice night of entertainment with their families to show up. So much talent. We're talking students, obviously, that you see on stage, the singing, the acting, the stage presence, The pit with our musicians in it, the live music that accompanies the musical is incredible. And then right down to the back stagehands. And yours truly's daughter, my senior, who is a seamstress and sews, had the opportunity to even work on a lot of the costumes for this musical. What I'm trying to say is there's so many different ways that our students show competency and how they're smart and what they're capable of. And for all the students, first of all, that are involved and have worked so hard for this performance that's going to be coming up on Thursday, I want to say great job. We're proud of you. And for everyone else in the community, take a night, come out for the show. It's great Clarkston entertainment. So thank you. Next, it's my pleasure to recognize one of my own in terms of our administrative team here at Central Office. I'd like Ms. Kelly Allen to stand up, please. You know how it is to be able to have the spotlight on you. Our Director of Marketing and Community Relations, Kelly Allen, on her achievement of an accreditation in public relations. Kelly's had to complete a rigorous panel of presentations and pass a complex series of exams to attain this special designation. She's not a leader in communication here in Clarkston. You should know that she's a leader in Oakland County, Southeast Michigan, and people know her across the country. So it's kind of nice to know that we have that kind of power in terms of communication and getting the message out about Clarkston schools. Congratulations, Kelly. Finally, just an announcement that for next Monday and Tuesday, there'll be no school for staff or students this midwinter break, and I wish everybody a safe and restful couple days. Thank you, Mr. Need.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. We have no presentation items tonight. We'll move along to our action items. Item 6.1, approval of personnel changes. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the personnel changes as listed on the attached sheets.
Support.
Motion's made and supported. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Lucido? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6.2 is the approval of our district's vote for the MASB Board of Directors. The board has received some information in the packet as well as some emails from candidates for the Region 8, one of the Region 8 membership on the Board of Directors, which is the Tri-County area of Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County. We need to address this at this meeting to meet the deadline. So do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Clarkston Board of Education votes for Mr. Roderick Means of Westwood Community School District in Wayne County for the Region 8 three-year term.
Support.
Motion's made and supported. Mrs. Crane, do you want to give any additional comments for your motion?
Knowing that the nominees are being interviewed right now as we speak and that we had to do this at this meeting, I tried to dig in and do a little bit of research as best we could. Mrs. Love and I actually met with Mr. Means at the DC Advocacy Institute over the weekend. And then I also had another chance to talk to him during the Winter Institute just this past weekend. And that coupled with just my research, I just think that he would be a good choice.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6.3 is the approval of some contracts regarding our construction of our new junior high school. May I have a motion, please?
I move the Board of Education approve the contract for Complete Interactive Technologies Incorporated in the amount of $292,916.42, an additional 10% construction contingency in the amount of $29,292 as presented.
Support.
Motion's made and supported. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6.4 is the approval of change orders for some electrical and foundation work. May I have a motion, please?
I move the Board of Education approve the construction change orders for Metro Electric Bulletin Number 4 in the amount of $71,728, and for J.J. Barney's additional helical pier work in the amount of $50,372.
Support.
Motion's made and supported, and again, this work is for the new junior high school construction. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6.5 is the approval of some playground upgrades for the Early Childhood Center and the Funshine program at the high school. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the playground improvements at the Early Childhood Center and the high school Funshine program to Rebuild Fund Incorporated in the amount of $103,000, and to Albinelli for concrete sidewalks in the amount of $39,800. We have also set a contingency and allowance in the amount of $96,780 for a total recommendation of $239,580.
Support.
Motion's made and supported. Any questions or comments? I know Mr. Goodman is here in the audience if anybody has any additional questions. Mrs. McGinnis.
President Need, I just have a question to ask. Is this a normal rotation of upgrades of playground equipment in the district?
Mr. Goodman, can you kindly respond to that?
I would say yes. Some of them have outlived their useful life, and but both schools, that's the original playground at the Funshine at the high school. So it's again, that one's more than outlived its useful life. And then the believe it or not, this Early Childhood Center is now 20 years old, and that's about what we try to start to make updates. A lot of things become obsolete where we can't buy parts to complete repairs and things like that for it.
President Need, I just want to make a comment that I'm real appreciative that the district is keeping an eye on our playground equipment, because there was a day in this district when we had extremely obsolete and even dangerous playground equipment some 20 years ago. And to see the district is keeping an eye on the playground equipment and its availability to be maintained and be safe for our children, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm just going to add that this is 100% covered by grants. It's covered by our GSRP startup grants that have to be spent by June 30th.
Right. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
And just,
Mrs. Love.
yeah, just to clarify for the contingency of $96,000, that includes the removal, disposal, and the mulch and fence work as well?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
so we don't have those contracts, so we're carrying an allowance to get those as we start the work. The big thing to get to tonight was the playground equipment has a long lead time, and because it's funded with grants, we have to have it installed and invoiced before June 30th. So this allows us to get the parts ordered, and we'll continue to find vendors to and contractors to do the rest of the work. But
Okay, so that's why it's all lumped in together.
yeah, so those pieces we don't have actual prices for, but we feel we can do it all within that
Within
allowance.
96, okay.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Goodman. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We have no report items tonight. We have two discussion items. The first one, item 8.1, discussion on the School Resource Officer Partnership and Funding. Dr. Ryan.
Okay, thank you, President Need. And the reference to the partnerships I'm referring to is the current arrangements that Clarkston Schools has worked with both Springfield and Independence Township to help have the support for the resource officers that we have in Clarkston Schools. Currently, we have one officer assigned to each one of our secondary buildings. Just a reminder for our community those tuning in tonight. And we have one officer that's spread across our 7 elementary schools. So with that, we are currently in the process of evaluating and negotiating with our townships and our ability to continue the support of the services of these resources in our buildings. And I should, before I get too far into my monologue here, be able to at least give a shout out to the crowd. Mr. Chuck File, who's here at our board meeting tonight. Wait for our board, who is our Independence Township Supervisor. Which is always interesting when you talk about public entities when it comes to intergovernmental and other relationships that require negotiations or approvals or collaboration. Entities like us have to do a majority of this in public, under the public eye, as part of the Open Meetings Act. I have informed our Board of Education some of the preliminary proposals and things that we've been working with both townships. It should be a note that why we're having this conversation at all this evening is because Oakland County, the commissioners, and our executive have found it within their need to levy what I view as an enormous and, as far as my understanding of it right now, a very unfair level of increase for overall protection police services of Oakland County Sheriff across the entire county. This increase, I'll say publicly, has not been given any rationale in any type of explanation to why we could understand or why this increase has occurred. It was done unilaterally, and to be fair to our partners at both townships that we cooperate with in Clarkston with, very much last minute. It was after the election, in a very short period of time for both of our supervisors in both townships, Independence and Springfield, both being new, coming into their roles, were immediately met with between 15 and 18% increases. And again, this is my understanding, at least for the resource officers, that being even higher towards an 18%. But for all the officers that are assigned to the township that Independence Township supports were increased greatly. This obviously creates a financial strain to our partners, both in Independence and Springfield Townships, and is worthy of a conversation of how we can work together to solutioning to keep this critical service, which has been put forth by our school community, our staff, and myself into the future. So to look at the relative costs, our initial conversations with Springfield Township is more along the lines of how we structure that yearly cost. But we're still in conversations with them. As far as Independence Township and myself and Mr. Lucido in meeting with Mr. File and really trying to sharpen our pencils to get some preliminary positioning. The school district, and again, I did not have authorization to make a deal, but at least looking to get a conversation going, so that would bring a constructive conversation back to this group, was along the lines of splitting that large increase between us and the township, even though that we don't have a complete split in the proportion of our current coverage for those resource officers. Mr. File, at least from our recollections and looking at that, thinks this is a much more dramatic impact for the township and is interested in continuing to talk about how we could possibly fund these. But one possibility that was floated by him, and again, I'm not sure that was, at the extent he's had conversations with his board, but looking at transferring the total cost of the funding to the school district for the resource officers and increasing possibly other police support within the township. So what I'm coming tonight with the board, and I'm glad Mr. Fowle can be present too, is to kind of do a historical perspective of our arrangement with Independence Township right now, focused, because Springfield Township actually just began this relationship with us this past school year. This is the first year, so there's no history that way like we have with the great history with Independence Township. We also want to look at, to the best of our knowledge, again, we're almost third-party contractors in a way that this is coming from the county onto the backs of the township, and then the relationship for us to be able to help support that here at the school district. So what you'll hear secondly after that, first the history will come from Ms. Rogers. Mr. Lucido then provide kind of a little bit of a financial look at, what's in play. And I'm suggesting a great public conversation with our board members and what we can do as good partners moving forward together on this critical element of our operations, and some direction so that once the lights are off and Mr. Lucido can go to work with Mr. File and with Springfield Township, we can have some direction so I can speak with some authority when I'm in those meetings. And then obviously at the end I'll report back. So this time I would turn to Ms. Rogers to give us a report of the last several years and what that relationship, just kind of in summary, has been in terms of the funding of the resource officers. and then we'll turn to Mr. Lucido to dig in a little deeper.
So this will be quick. Prior to 2015-16 school year, we didn't contribute anything. It was 100% funded by the township. So that was zero cost to us back in 2014-15, so the years prior to that. And then starting in the year of 2015-16, we started contributing $30,000 a year towards SOR. Mind you, we didn't have as many SOR officers back then, but we paid $30,000, and I figured it out. It was around 15% at that time of the cost is what we contributed. And we continued to pay the $30,000 in 2016-17. We also paid $30,000 to the township in 2017-18. And then we started the 50% relationship for the school year months. We only pay the school year months. We don't pay the summer months. And we started that 50% at 2018-19, and that has continued until now, the 50%.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
So the new salary scale for SROs to include the vehicle, based on the bill that we had from 23-24 from Independence Township and what we use with Springfield, it's up about $30,000 an officer. So for our 4 liaisons, it's roughly $120,000 if my data is, my comparison is accurate. The bill that we got is based off our fiscal year, so it's school year, and the rate change is our calendar, so I'm sure that's off a few thousand in either direction based on how they calculate it. There's another caveat that is in these contracts that the county is entering into with the townships, and it's $1 per pupil to fund a special fund for resources for the school. So that would be another $6,500. So that's what I anticipate is roughly like $125,000 increase. That's for our total program. So our total program right now is about $630,000. This is going to put it roughly at $750 is what I estimate. There's another, and they're doing a 3-year contract is what the county is proposing with the townships, and it's another 6%, and then for 2027 it's 6% plus CPI. So I'd imagine that's going to be around 10% probably with the way inflation's tracking right now. So those are the increased costs. It is a significant increased cost to both of our townships that we're partnering with right now.
Any questions for Mr. Lucido?
I have a couple questions, President Need. Based on the numbers you just presented to us, what type of budget cut or elimination do you feel we might have to incur to support the payment that is being pushed over to us?
Well, the state is currently looking at what kind of funding we're going to get next year per pupil, but I think our original board parameters had $2 million cut per year per cut for the next 2 years to get our budget where we're not deficit spending. But we're going to have to relook at our model based on what's being proposed by the governor at this point.
I'm also correct to believe and understand that there is no one direct line item in the state school aid budget to provide for safety in our school buildings? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Therefore, any cost for safety is directly affecting the general fund and the programs that we provide for our students, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. When these officers are in our building and there should be a community-wide emergency call, are they part of the police force that could answer a community-wide call, or do they stay solely at our school buildings at that time?
They stay solely at our buildings.
I think that's all my questions for right this minute. Thank you.
It might be important information relative to that to look at in feedback that we have from our substation. And again, this is the best information I have, is that roughly of the current 4 officers that we have in the schools, if it was just down to fielding calls, just to be fair, fielding calls that were coming inside the school, because regardless, the schools exist in the township in this part of the county, so there will be a response from police. That would be roughly, correct me, Mr. Lucio, 1 officer that was we were led to kind of think that would be the requirement in and itself. So looking at total police presence that we have. And it should be also to me noted that it's not just about security. You know, these individuals are not just security guards, right? So they're, as we spoke publicly before, and within their job descriptions with our safety director, they're involved in promoting positive behavior and interactions with the police in our community. They're involved in direct investigations at different levels, and they're to support the school on a lot of different levels that relate to not only the criminal system, but overall, you know, the youth in our community and how we're trying to provide that kind of culture and presence that I believe is the piece that this community is built on. You know, there's a strong semblance of a respect for law and order, and one that we want to kind of build, and one in understanding, not in fear or misunderstanding. So all of it kind of comes together in terms of that support piece.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Mrs. Oz?
Yeah, did I hear you correctly that Independence Township wants us to take on 100% of the increase?
Now, I don't know if that'd be 100% accurate. What I would say right now, where we are in the conversation, is that Mr. File put forth that he would prefer if this was to be moved, those officers, to Clarkston Community Schools for full support. This is conversations in our preliminary, we'll call it negotiations or discussions. This wasn't a board action or anything by Independence Township, but a place where we're starting from, that we're going to get direction from our board tonight to proceed forward with.
Okay, well, I can say, for me personally, I think it makes sense to share the cost how we currently are sharing it. And I think it would be really absurd for us to pay for the 3 months a year that we're not even using it. I don't see why we would pay any of that increase at all. And I wouldn't support that at all as a board member to increase that.
Dr. Ryan, can you remind me, does the school district have a local millage to support police?
We do not. And another point that we made in our conversation with Mr. File is at some point be able to potentially collaborate on some sort of police millage that would also affect the schools.
And can you remind the board, as we have some newer board members, would it be legal for us to go to the community and ask for such a millage ourselves?
Ourselves, I believe that would not be within our ability to bond directly, because that would be an indirect contractor across the school district.
And I believe the township has a police millage for such a purpose. Is that your understanding as well?
That's my understanding as well, yes.
And so as I look at this and having lived through the history of who pays for what when, it's all tax dollars, right? We're all serving the same people in our community. Mm-hmm. And so shifting responsibility from one set of tax dollars to another is certainly a curious thing when the services of these officers are serving the same community either way. Mm-hmm. And the same people are paying these tax dollars. And so certainly a cost sharing, as we have been doing the last few years, I think makes some sense. I think our primary purpose in existing is to make sure our kids are being educated and our kids are prepared when they leave our doors, they can be successful for whatever future is before them. And so I think our mission, certainly when our parents entrust their students to us, is first and foremost, we want to follow the law. And secondly, I think we want to be as safe as possible in our delivery of our program. And I think that's something that I don't know anybody could really be against. You know, we have made significant investments in our physical plant safety, you know, in auditing our safety, you know, attributes of our buildings and our programs. And we've gone so far as to look to expand our police presence within the district. But the police are still coming through a municipality because the municipality provides the police force for our community. And so the needs that we have are not school district specific needs, the community needs. Mm-hmm. And so I think, you know, figuring out how to split whatever cost this is or find a way to fund this cost makes a lot of sense. But I'd be hard pressed to go to my constituency here in the district and say, I'm sorry, we have to raise class sizes because we don't have a way to pay for these police officers that we need to keep your kids safe. You know, that's not a choice as a board member, you know, I'm really willing to make. I'm not putting safety or education one before the other. I think we need to look at, as a community, this is an issue that we need to solve, and it needs to be solved in a more global respect to how do we fund police and protection in our community, and what does that look like? And certainly, I think we're limited in what we could do as a school district, because we can't go for local millage to fund these kinds of things. We're provided our state funding, and that's all that we are allowed to collect locally.
I hear you, Mr. Hiron. I just want to reemphasize, from the conversations I had with Mr. File, that he is open to be creative, whether it was through an election through the township or others. I think it was a point where just for him to say, we're here in this together. We have to be creative to figure this out. So where we land, that's a whole other story.
Mr. Clark.
I do have one question on this. It mentions that there's a vehicle involved. Is that vehicle cost going to be a singular cost? Would that be spread out? I know that was an
It's
area
factored into the salary, so they charge us per office. It's like officer with a car based on the rank that we get. At least that's my understanding. I have like a pay scale.
Okay.
President Need,
Mrs. McGinnis.
I would also add, just to keep our community informed, that Clarkston is a base-funded school district in this state. That means we're at the lowest funded level of per pupil allocation across the entire state. Now, I'm proud to say there's very few people in this community that know that, because we have a premier school district. We work very, very hard to provide the programming and the buildings and the environment for our students that makes them think that they're in the richest district in the world in this community. And we're not. We're base funded. That means that 3/4 of the school districts in Oakland County get thousands of dollars more per pupil since 1994 than Clarkston Community Schools gets. So to take our precious school dollars away from our students' education and put it towards a greater resource than we have had to do in the past is a really painful exercise this board would have to take to do that. And I would have a very, very hard time funding more money to safety, even though, of course, it is paramount to our students' education and to them, for them to know that they are safe in this school and that they can learn in this school building without being impacted by what might be going on in the environment outside of them. But it'd be very, very hard for me to challenging for me to decide I'm going to pay more for a school resource officer than I'm going to pay more to educate my student. And that's the bottom line for me.
Thank you, Mrs. McGinnis. Mrs. Green.
I don't have much to add other than I completely agree with my colleagues who've already spoken and have said it very eloquently. But I would just like to remind people that these SRO officers not only communicate with the students, the public school students that attend their school, but they communicate with their families. They communicate, I know they've made calls out. I know that they have just fostered those good relationships, and they have done immeasurable good since we've put them into place. And so I agree with everything you said, that I don't want to take them away, but I don't want to keep them at the cost of higher class sizes or losing programs or anything like that.
Thank you, Mrs. Green.
I would just
Mr.
add
Heyer.
that I think the community is aware. We've done a good job communicating this, but just to tie it into this particular conversation, we face an inordinate number of threats that many which seem to come on Sunday night. And our officers that we work with are the ones that are going to these families' houses, that are helping us track these things down to make sure that we know the origin of every single one of these threats. And I know our administration works tirelessly around the clock dealing with these things to make sure that we are as safe as we possibly can be every morning when kids come to school. And I think that aspect of how do we provide that level of service would be very difficult if we didn't have the SRO program, but it's not something we can possibly do without. We absolutely have to track down every single one of these things. And there are a lot of these things, unfortunately, at this point. And, I think that is paramount to this conversation of that's the level of safety that I'll say our community demands and needs to feel safe in how we operate a program for their children.
Thank you, Mr. Heyer.
I would only add that I go into a lot of school buildings just with my day job, and I've been present in probably already 2 lockdowns this school year. This is just the sad state of things that, we cannot live without these school resource officers. It's just a standard now in our, in our school buildings. So I would concur with Mr. Heyer's comments about the need. We can't consider not having, their presence there. I would also say that I think the students build a relationship with these officers, and they have a real sense of safety and security. So I I hope we can just work something out in terms of the dollar commitment that we're going to make without impacting our kids in our classroom. But I agree, we can't be in an environment without these officers.
Thank you, Mrs. Egan. Further comment? Dr. Ryan, do you have the feedback that you were looking for from the board?
I have some of it, but I want to dig in a little bit deeper with the board tonight. And what I would like to have, because I hear the board, when you speak in a voice of, not wanting to trade what we have in the classroom, but feeling absolutely necessary and the urge, and that it's not negotiable that we don't have these type of supports in our schools. That being said, looking at the financial realities that are facing townships across this county currently, I would like the board to give me just a little bit of room to be able to see what we can do, Mr. Lucida, Ms. Rogers, financially, to try to help support the burden that's been placed on our townships this year, both Springfield and Independence, to be good partners in good times and bad. And that's why I publicly wanted, that not only to hear everybody out, but with 100% transparency to be able to tomorrow to reach out to Mr. Fowle to schedule another appointment for us to be able to talk, and hopefully at some point very soon hear how both the Independence and Springfield Township boards are leaning in their concerns directly, and hopefully a public dialogue that we can eventually sharpen the pencils and get down to what we need to do to get this solved. I think we can, but I do believe Clarkston Schools needs to step up to some degree on this offset of this enormous increase that's been put on the townships. I need a little room to maneuver and be able to work with that. And again, it's always kind of interesting and awkward at the same time to be publicly having a conversation with the individual I have to negotiate that's sitting 6-7 rows back from me. But God love America, so we'll get down and get after it. And I would like to hear back that I'm given that latitude to work within that, and I'll come back with another. We'll see where we can go from here.
Well,
and I just want to say I have a lot of confidence in working with Mr. Fowle that we'll be able to figure something out.
Dr. Ryan, I guess, first and foremost, I would say I don't look, this increase is not coming from the township. They're sort of the messenger in this case. I think our dismay and displeasure at the way this was handled, with a very short turnaround time and a very huge increase over a 3-year period, we should absolutely register that with the county sheriff's department. I know Stephanie has a good relationship with the sheriff. We could definitely, send our feelings that way, concerns, to let them know, this is not acceptable. This is such an essential service. You can't pull the rug out from under us, and give us, 30, 60 days notice for a 3-year increase. That's just not going to work for us. I would say that first and foremost. Because we're on such a tight timeline, in a larger, if we had time to plan, I would say let's do a community survey and let's see what the community has to say about where these funds should come from and what the value of this service is. Absent of that, given kind of maybe a tighter timeline here with what we're dealing with, I think I'm not an expert in municipal finance, and I'm certainly not an expert in another entity's finances, but given that the community has police millages in place, I think we need to look at what can that really fund, and how do we fit into that with these school resource officers, and what's really changed over the last 8 years or so that it has changed from where we used to be, and I look at that as kind of a base place from where to start. I think we absolutely want to do our part. We understand costs are increasing. We understand inflation has certainly been an issue the last 3 or 4 years. And I would say, if there's something small that we can pay to share in the increase in cost, I'd certainly be okay with that. But I think we have to look bigger picture here as well, and we all work for the community. We're not here to come up with our own ideas necessarily. I mean, we represent the community sitting on the school board. I mean, municipalities represent that same community. We should be working together to meet the needs, I think, of that community. Shifting things back and forth. I mean, there are a lot of things that we do for the township, because it's the same community, relative to programs that we house, or we have special rental agreements and rates and things, because it doesn't make sense to just trade tax dollars back and forth. I mean, our facilities on both sides are paid for by our community, by our taxpayers. And so I think we need to be good stewards of that. So a long-winded way of saying, I think on the big picture, the entire calculus of where those funds come from, we need to look at. On the short-term picture, I think, some kind of cost share I would be open to. I think the board would be open to. But I think we need to look long-term at this too, and that may include some kind of survey component or engaging our community jointly as well.
Well, I agree with that, Mr. Heyer. And Mrs. Crane and I, as board leadership, we've had a little more time to look at this. It was our suggestion that we do give Dr. Ryan some latitude to share some of this increased cost, recognizing that it all came as a shock and surprise to all of us. Given the political realities, I don't think that increase is going away, as upset as we are as to how it came down. And we believe that the board is best served by giving Dr. Ryan some latitude to discuss this with the township and then come back to us. I don't want to speak for you, but
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. I just want to, you said it longer, but I do want to remind people that they are serving the community. It's not just that they're in the public school system. They are Clarkston Community SROs. So regardless of where kids may go to school, if something happens to your neighbor who goes to Clarkston Community Schools, it's those SROs that are going to be there. So I think that, yeah, that's exactly, I agree.
okay, thank you. Mr. File? If you would like to come up to the podium, we usually require people to sign in ahead of time, but given the nature of the topic and the fact that you're here, we would welcome to hear whatever thoughts you have on the subject.
And I'm new.
And you're new.
That's my favorite saying right now. People throw stuff at me like this. I do want to appreciate the fact that you're having this conversation. It's a very disturbing one, I think. I think everything the way they handled it was very politically motivated. I'm not really going to speak much to what I think is the resolution to the issue, but I just do want to bring some additional clarity to how we got here and our position from the township to this point. I did have the meeting, as Dr. Ryan was saying. I believe that we can work out a solution, but this is a major hit. I got the notice, the county said they did a study 18 months ago on how there are 12 municipalities in Oakland County out of 60 that contract with Oakland County Sheriff. All the rest of them are either going with Michigan State Police, which is a couple of them north of us, which they are now being dropped, so they're going to have to look at an option, or they have their own police force. So from that standpoint, there's not a lot of us that actually contract through the county. Matter of fact, we're one of the only ones that have kind of an unusual situation where not only do we subcontract out to the schools, we also subcontract to the village. And so we've got kind of a weird little unique situation going on there. 18 months ago, the commissioners said they did a study, kind of an activity-based costing study. I don't know if anybody's financed that really means they look at every single possible cost they're incurring and transferring it into a pot to come up with a total amount. They went through and did this, and then they took those dollars amount and said, okay, how many police officers do we have? What's their ranks? And came up with this very bizarre formula to allocate the cost to. So in their calculations, they went through everything from the number of bullets that they would dispense, whether it's through just what they carry, through practice rounds, because they're required to do a certain amount of practice rounds, to the cars, to any of the maintenance on the cars, into any training. You name it, you could think about it, it's in there. And then it's even outside of that would be any support, administrative support, whether it's directly through Oakland County Sheriff's or not. Now, when we asked, when I say we, a bunch of the other, 10 of the other supervisors, we went down there and talked to them and said, please let us see the math. Because even the union for the sheriffs were against this. Just so you know, this is turned out to be a 15.2% overall increase for the township in year one. Okay, so that amounts to just about $1 million. So this is $1 million that was not budgeted. So I did hear the conversation about the police millage that we did. We did do one, and at this rate, it will be negative in 3 years. And we can't go back and raise it. We would have to come up with a new alternative to that. So that amount that was budgeted was not even, the only saving grace why there's going to be any sort in the first year and a half is because we were trying to go through and save for a new substation. Right now, the 34 officers are working out of a space about like this. So it was tiny, so again, Oakland County does not pay for the substations. The township has to pay for it. So from that standpoint, that's where the additional was coming from. They did not tell us about this increase until mid-December. So there's clearly something wrong there with all this, and they also told me that I had to get them a response back in 14 days. Clearly, I did not make that mark. So I called down there and said, that's impossible. I'm new. I don't know what's going on. You can't ask me to do this yet. So I've been dragging and dragging and dragging our feet. I will tell you this, is that on Tuesday, this was presented to the board, the township board, and the board did approve the contract without the SRO. Now, that does not mean that the SRO is off the table. It was just because we didn't know where we were at yet. There's obviously a lengthy process between going through your board, our board, the village, their board, trying to figure out all these different moving pieces. But we did have to get a contract signed to them, because otherwise they said they're going to pull them all. Now, I know they wouldn't have actually pulled them all. My board gave me the latitude to be able to deal with the SRO. So I think the same thing that Dr. Sean Ryan is asking for is the same thing my board gave me to be able to go through and sit down and try to figure this out. I firmly believe that there is two things we're going to have to look at. There is going to be a short term, and I would say short term is over the next 12 months. What are we going to do? I think that next 12 months is going to be challenging at best, painful most likely. From there on, we have to look at alternative options. This movement, I almost call it a movement because it is really more of a political social movement than it is a financial one, is that the township, I have been engaging with some other townships that have police forces, and when I sat back, and the option used to be that it would make sense, would not make sense to pull the police force internally to the township. The reason being is the liability, the insurance costs and all that just made it too steep to do something like that. With the new way they're counting, they're including all the premiums for the insurance and everything else in that number. So when I talked to Waterford, which I don't know if you guys know this or not, but they have their own police department, their own dispatch. So I was over there talking to them, and based on their total pool and their total cost, and we've started breaking it down, it would cost the township about $350,000 on the back of a napkin, so put an asterisk on it, compared to what we're paying for the county. So now the delta is about $350,000 plus or minus. So we're looking at a longer-term solution as well, which ultimately probably means migrating away from Oakland County. It's just, they have their own agendas. Matter of fact, for the first time in the history of the contract, they actually called the SROs out separately. Before, it was just another line item in there. Now there's a completely separate, different contract. Now, why are they doing that? I'm not 100% sure. I think I have some ideas. I think the idea is there is directionally is that they're going to, it's a very toxic conversation to say that we don't want to protect our children. So at the same token, with some of the things they're doing and the way they're costing things out, it almost looks like, and it was point blank asked to Woodward, I asked him point blank, is this a defund the police move? And he got very upset very quickly and said, absolutely not, da 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 da. But yet everything he kept on talking to me seems like that's the direction it was going, and that was kind of the perception of the other supervisors that were there. Given that Oakland County is moving more in that direction every year in the voting trend, I don't see it going away, and therefore I believe that we're going to probably have to come up with our own police department or some sort of regional police department option, much like we do with fire. So, you know, there's a couple of us, the North Oakland County Fire, I forget what the C stands for, that goes through and says, okay, you know, Groveland and Brandon and Holly and all those guys can't afford their own fire department, so they join together. I'm looking at that probably directionally as an option to help fund this situation. I believe it's something we just have to start bringing on. I don't remember which one of you said it, but I think it was one of you two ladies said that it's just now part of the day-to-day operation costs, and that needs to start getting factored into it. Whether it's on your balance sheet or ours, or income statement and expenses, it's one or the other. The bottom line, I'm a resident here, and so I pay taxes. Some goes to you guys, some goes to us, a lot goes to the county, right? At the end of the day, we have a responsibility, I believe, to all the residents, whether you're sitting on this board or our board, to make sure that we're taking care of the kids, okay? Unequivocally, that's not even in question. It's just now a matter of the math, because ultimately over the next 3 years, it is going to be about a 36 to almost 37% increase over what was budgeted for the 3 years already, and we already figured there was going to be an increase, so we bumped up our budget, but this is on top of it. I do, again, I kind of moved off it real quick, I do want to point out that of that 15.2, 36, 37% aggregate over the 3 years, that the police are only looking at a 0.8 to 0.9% pay raise. So the money's not going to them. That's why the union themselves are very upset. Matter of fact, they wrote a letter, and all of us municipalities, except for Pontiac, signed a letter stating their frustrations with how this was handled as well. Just to give you an idea real quick that how egregious this is, a resource officer this year in 2025 will cost $187,116 a piece, for a total of $561,348. Next year that number goes to $612,000, the next year after that goes to $670,000. We're looking at basically a $1.5, $1.8 million cost on the SROs. It's huge. It's huge across the board. You know, we didn't have the funds, we didn't anticipate it. We tried very, very hard to get them to go through and take that 15.2, because that's the big hit, right? That's the big hit. Half of it is coming up front. So we tried to get them to say, look, just take it and average it out over the 3 years. Don't give us 50% in the first year. And they wouldn't budge. They said, no, too bad. You guys have had it too easy for too long. So that's kind of a little bit of the backstory and the things that we're doing over the township. I do believe that there are some creative options. You know, I come from the private sector. This is now, I don't know, maybe week 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 or something like that for me. You know, in the private sector, and I don't want anybody here to be insulted, But we always figure we were smarter than the government, so we can let them come up with whatever they want to. We'll figure a way around it, and so on and so forth. So I come with that mentality. I think there's some ways we can think outside of the box to get this resolved in a way. Again, first year is just going to be painful, but I think year 2, 3, and on, that we can look back and say, okay, this was the moment in the time where we decided that we were going to take control of our own future and our own kids' safety and take the full responsibility for it and not be at the mercy of some other entity that may have a different agenda. Okay. And that's really all I wanted to do. I wanted to give that little bit of a backstory and also as you're sitting there thinking about it, you know, I talk with my hands a lot apparently. I fully believe that there are ways to solve this problem. The problem is that I don't know if they can be, because government moves really slow, that I don't know if we can get it all resolved in the first year, but I think for the years going forward, we're going to be able to come up with a solution.
Mr. Fowle, can you just clarify? I have no idea what the chain of command or the process is, but is this a decision that's made at the county commissioner
Yes.
level? It's not a police department decision?
No, so it's the county commissioners, which is kind of the equivalent of your board, my board group there, right? They sat down with the CFO of Oakland County, and they came back with a number. In all actuality, the first round of numbers were much smaller. They came to a subcommittee of the commissioners, and they went through it, and it looked directionally like everything was going to go through. You know, the interesting thing is that they said, okay, we're going to use the cost of living published by the state of Michigan. So that's a very clear, easy number we can all live with, right? I mean, it's a published number. Hopefully really smart people behind it are come up with it, drive it. Then all of a sudden they said, well, we're going to need to add 3% on top of that. And then when asked why, they said, well, because of health insurance costs. But anybody who knows how you calculate CPI, health insurance is a factor in that calculation. Now, Oakland County is self-funded, so they have some maybe unusual costs. I don't know. But this is some of the problems we ran into when we were trying to dig in to figure out how they did this calculation. So Oakland County Sheriff's Department came back and said, well, 3 seems high. We don't quite understand it, but okay. We know that you're adding a bunch of stuff in there that has not historically been in there. Maybe it's not part of the CPI. Okay, whatever. At the last minute, one of the commissioners came back and said, no, it should be 6%. When asked for further justification of why 6%, this particular commissioner could not come back with an explanation. Just said, because that's the way it looks like, and we talked to the CFO and the, deputy CFO or whatever, and they said, yeah, it's probably safer. Well, of course, it's always safer if you raise the number. That doesn't mean it's accurate or right, but yes, it was definitely safer to go with 6. The union itself at that point in time said that's not right. And they've been up in arms pretty much ever since, because in all reality, the problem is they knew that this increase was going to be huge for any township to absorb. And obviously that meant that the way that you're going to deal with something like this that comes at you so hard and so fast is going to be by making cuts. And they were concerned about the fact that, if you look at it, I heard you say that you're not great at parting financials. If you look over the last, 5, 6 years, the COVID money, right? All the COVID money that came in, the government's raised a bunch of taxes across the board and gave a bunch of money to a bunch of entities. Most counties gave a portion of that to their police department, the county sheriffs. Not a penny went to our county sheriffs. And so from there, they've been all along in Bouchard, which is, God bless him, he's a kind of a lone wolf in that pack, which doesn't really make sense now that I just said it, but you know what I mean. And so he's been fighting the fight every day about how are we going to get the money to start paying for this stuff. We have a single helicopter that is constantly under repair. And so if there's any need to do anything, we have problems, potential issues there. And he's like, we just can't get the funding anywhere. So The county is still taking all the same amount of money that it was. It's just reallocating it to, I think somebody brought up the fact that, I think you brought up the fact that in the SRO, and I think this is part of the reason why they carved that contract out, there is now this social fund that hasn't been defined what it is, what its objectives are, how much it's going to raise, where it's going to go, who's going to manage it. None of that has even been defined. But they're carving it out to make sure that there's funds going into it. And so there's problems there. There's problems there. And so that's why the deputy union is like, no, this doesn't make any sense. And then that obviously carried forward where it was supposed to be CPI plus 3, now it's CPI plus 6. And as pointed out, that's going to be somewhere around 9-10% a year increase. It's brutal. It's brutal.
Mr. Farrell, thank you very much for coming out tonight and sharing all your thoughts and the
Appreciate it.
background. Very, very helpful.
I look forward to working with you guys. Thank you.
Any other discussion from board members?
Mr. Need, I just wanted to say that, in the past, we've had a pretty strong history with working with the township. We share athletic fields, community ed, ITV. We've done a lot of work collaboratively. I'm very optimistic that we will continue to be able to move forward, solving this together. It's just not there is not an easy solution at this point in time. But I do like Mr. Heyer's idea of perhaps reaching out to the public and finding out, what do they think? How do we want to fund this? How do we want to take care of this? I mean, we're not going to sit here and accomplish anything by trading tax dollars, right? Increasing our fees for something that the township helps pay, the township uses. It just doesn't make sense. So I do like the idea of maybe reaching out to the community in some way, maybe having a public forum, something where we can, address this head on and see what kind of ideas come in from the public.
Thank you, Mrs. Egan. Dr. Ryan?
Yeah, I would just say, I think I'm confident looking that really, as you hear from Mr. File, that there's so much more that binds us together in this part of the county and within Clarkston. And we stand together, we're stronger, we push together with our values, we'll carry the day. If we let them divide us and conquer us piecemeal, then that's what will happen. So I have full intent and know already from working Mr. File that we're gonna solve this.
Mrs. McGinnis?
President Need, my quick Google search of the 25-26 budget for Oakland County on page 125 would seem to indicate that their 24 budget was 164,894, and their 25 budget is 140,613. So I'd like to look into that a little bit, and I think it would be a very good thing for us board members who are very good at advocating for our district, for us to confirm these numbers and write to our commissioners appropriately and ask the questions that need to be asked.
Thank you. Mrs. Love?
I believe there's a county board meeting tomorrow if we wanted to advocate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing further, thank you all very much. Again, thank you, Mr. File. Mr. Lucido, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, no, I'm just getting ready for the next presentation.
one? Okay, all right. Moving on then, item 8.2 is our discussion on schools of choice programs for the next school year. Dr. Ryan?
As promised a year ago, I said that when it came time to review, we're in that review period for our school choice programs. We're going to focus on the open enrollment one specifically tonight. We want to be able to share some information broadly on all the elements, but kind of dig into that and give a little bit of reflection of what that cohort looks like, and to get some dialogue and some direction from the board as we proceed forward. On the whole, I feel like we were successful in our endeavor this year, and to reiterate from Mr. Lucido's presentation earlier, well, actually it was in the fall, relative to pupil accounting, that we managed for the first time in a long time to be flat, which was considered a major success in terms of overall program integrity and long-term health of our school district that way. Mr. Lucido, kind of give us the tale of the tape.
Yep. So this is our analysis of last year and where we're at with our school choice. So these are all the programs that we're currently offering. We have our IB program, Clarkston Virtual Career Immersion, that's all of our CTE, Construction Tech, CSM Tech, the Young Fives in kindergarten, that's what we did 75 in last year. The employee non-resident, that's any staff member who's getting a paycheck from Clarkston, that's full-time, is allowed to send their students there. Project Search, that's our new special ed program at the hospitals. And prior program participant, those are students who enrolled in a program and are currently still attending school here. So we currently, from fall of 24, 450 students is what we have. So we studied attendance, behavior referrals, and academic success in math and reading for our Young Fives program. Our attendance, this is the average number of absences for our school of choice versus non-school of choice. With our school of choice students, there was one student that had 146 absences and two that had in the 40s. So it is skewed a little bit, but it was pretty close here. For behavior, we're basically looking at 1% of the population had a behavior referral in our Young Fives kindergarten program. So it's accurate based on the population, 1% of each. And then this is something that was actually anticipated, because there is a lot of thought that the parents who are driving their students here and don't have the transportation, that they're very committed to their students' academic success. And we did see that. So our school of choice outperformed our non-school of choice students in both reading and math. And then this is the slide that I showed you last in my presentation in November. I want you to focus at the bottom. So where it says 2024 and 2025. So in 2024, Plant Moran had us to be up 4 students, and our birth rate capture had us up to be 30 students, okay? We ended up being up 2 students, and we took 74 through Young Fives Kindergarten School of Choice. So we would have been down 72 students had we not run the program as we did last year. So Dr. Ryan and I and Ms. Mahoney and our team, we were currently looking at this, and this year, having the students to be able to place Young Fives through 5th grade, it helped us to have balanced class sizes, not collapse sections. And we did follow the board's directive and place most of those students in Young Fives and kindergarten. But now that we're looking that we have to start setting dates for next year, we wanted to look at this. So being down 72 when Plant Moran and our birth rates would project us to being up, next year we're projected to being down. So this is what we're kind of looking at now. We wanted to get some feedback from the board. In this next slide here, this is the recommendations that we have. We want to continue our secondary school of choice programs as unlimited 105 and 105C programs. And we're looking at a window, we're still establishing that, but we're looking, it'll be sometime in April through August 9th is really what we're looking for to capture students into those programs. And then our elementary school of choice, we would like to continue that. We did like it that it went through 5th grade. It was really helpful to balance out some class sizes and have some parity across our school district. So we're looking at doing that and in a limited program like we did last year. But we wanted to collect some feedback from the board. I know that you've asked for this data before to see how those students are performing in the areas that we shared. So we'd like to just hear your thoughts so we can come back to the proposal at the next board meeting for the secondary programs as well as our Young Fives through 5th grade program.
Thank you, Mr. Lucido. Questions for Mrs. Lucido before we get to comments? Okay, then. Comments, reactions?
So,
Mr. Heyer.
Mr. Lucido, in terms of kind of filling the grades and rounding out class size, right? That was part of the goal and the flexibility that allows us to essentially add the students and the revenue for the students without increasing any costs, right? And under that umbrella, how do you see this going forward where we're continuing to round out. So like if we round out class size this year, obviously we have a little bit of movement of parents moving away and families moving away, and we have new students who move into the community, and so we've got those in there. How does that rounding out sort of feature change now that we've already done it one year?
That's a good question. We still have some holes. Like I was looking at one of our elementaries, they're headed into having 33 in 5th grade right now. So if we run with that's way too high. We haven't run with that even. So like in that scenario, we would probably move sections around, move a student up there. But we have holes where we could have taken. I could have probably taken another 75 and leveled out class sizes even more. I don't know that. I think I continue to will be able to do that. It was really nice doing it. We've never done it before. We also worked with a different window. We had it all set up for July 1st, but we did not have a ton of teachers changing class sizes, packing stuff up. We've been able to continue to run the same Young Fives programs, kindergarten numbers at our schools without collapsing. So it not only like helped to level out class sizes, it helped to keep teachers in their grade levels and not move them around, you know.
And I remember we looked at the numbers, I don't know, 6 months ago, I think. The spread was pretty even in terms of Young Fives through 5th grade, if memory serves me.
Yes, we have pretty even class sizes. We actually put it up at an element. I think I shared with you before, just to celebrate how low we are in our classes. And we probably could do a better job sharing that with our teaching staff, because when you say, and I've gotten feedback before, like, is everyone like school of choice? Well, no, but they don't know that instead of having school of choice kids in a class size of 19, you would have been at 24 or 25 with residents. It's kind of, so it's worked out very well balancing it out. That's why we'd like to run it back. We did put Young Fives in kindergarten as our primary, because I don't think we have enough kids coming in to run the number of sections we do in Young Fives kindergarten, so we've been using this. But it's kept the same class sizes, kept those teachers in their classrooms.
Yeah, that was kind of my follow-up where I was going with that, is you would expect, I think, based on what you just said, that we would have more choice openings in Young Fives in kindergarten than we would in, say, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th.
That's very true.
Okay.
Because we've been using that, Steve, back to your original point, like we've been using that to funnel this many sections in those younger grades, so we kind of need it, or we'd reduce. I would have reduced the number of teachers without it last year, maybe one or two, and then we would have had some sections that were off, Especially in our smaller schools like Clarkston Elementary, Andersonville, if you're only running 2 in a grade level, it's very hard to have some standard class sizes or close to it.
Yeah, I guess I would be okay if we kept the status quo on this, but I would want to look at the data again next year, because I think there's a point where we do want to ratchet this down, but I think we need to continue to look at the data as we roll forward here, because I'm not sure that I want to continue to do the 75 every year.
I would agree.
But if there's still room to round out class sizes and maintain our programs, then I'm open to looking at it another year.
Thank you, Mr. Hine.
I would even say that it's getting better over time, being that we're losing students out of our ranks. So the students that we're backfilling in, hopefully, although it's going to be more heavy in the elementary side of it, the overall population has been going down. Homegrown that way, being able to even it out, we'll continue to hopefully be able to add, I want to say stability. I'll let Mr. Lucie respond directly to that, but stability that we build in elementary should translate to stability that we see in the middle school, junior high, and high school.
Yeah, like I shared last time, our middle school numbers are very low, junior high. We have some small class sizes coming through. I was with a number of elementary principals today. There's literally no space left in the elementaries, which is a good thing. That means we're using every inch of our square footage to educate kids with our support positions, and we've turned closets into offices. And unfortunately, we have some co-curricular teachers teaching on carts, which is not what we want. But having our buildings this full is ideal. And we hit it right, you know, like with being up 2 kids, that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to stop losing kids, and this is the first time in 12 years that that's been the case that I've seen my tenure here.
Thank you, Mr. Lucido. Your capture rate analysis, I think it's telling, because in 2000, we had 16,000 births in the county, and now we're down to 13,000. So there's going to be a decline. Even if you increase your capture rate a little, you're still going to have a significant decline.
Correct.
And following up on Mr. Heyer's comment, for the benefit of the public, this is a discussion we have every year. So whatever we do for this year, you know, we will revisit it again in 2026. So. Other comments, Mrs. Crane?
Yeah, I would just like to make sure that we know next year how many of the original 75 came on in year 2. I just think that's I know we will, but that's just an important number I'd like to kind of
the attrition number for the school choice.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
would
are
be
we
good.
keeping half? Are we keeping 95%? I mean, I don't know yet.
We do have that. I'll
Do
bring
we?
it. We just looked at
We'll
this.
put that in the week in review.
I don't want to. I don't want to
It's
miss.
fairly high.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to promise.
It was very high, but I don't want to misspeak. We will share that
Sure.
with you in the week in review.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a great point, Mrs. Crane, because that was a concern. We talked about the potential volatility, and so I wouldn't really expect that in year 1. That's definitely a number I want to continue to look
Yes.
at. I think the data you brought to us tonight is a great start of
Yeah.
the kind of things we want to look at. I think it gives us a good baseline.
I mean, I'd
and we
almost
wanna
like to
continue to look at
see,
that.
I mean, so that 104 absence, that was included in that average that you showed us? Yeah, so I mean, that's almost an anomaly that we can't, because that can happen with any kid, something,
Yes.
you know, that.
But in absences of that many, so I have one kid with 140, and I think the other 2 were in the 40s.
Yeah, it's-
That with that small of a number of students, that really
Shot it up.
skews that up.
Yeah.
Mrs. Love?
I would just like to, with the data that we're getting now, I appreciate it. I would also like to hear from the teachers who've had to experience this. The feedback I've heard hasn't been the best. So you're not asking for any more. You're just asking for the same amount as last
I'm asking
year.
for the same. I will say, and I wish there was a better way to do this, but when it's in the middle of July and August 1st is coming around, we're deciding, are we adding another section of kindergarten, adding 10 kids from school of choice, or are we running with the numbers I have? I will tell you this has significantly lowered class sizes. Now, do I go back, I'm making this up completely, have I ever gone to a kindergarten team at Bailey Lake and said, hey guys, do you want 3 sections of 24 or 4 sections of 18? I've never, there's no time for us to have that communication. We barely have time to even communicate with the principal on that. But I will tell you, that's what's happening. It's not more kids getting put in, or it's we would have taken a teacher away, but now that we have 8 kids to place in 2nd grade, we're now able to run 3 sections instead of cutting it down to 2, where they'd have I can't think of one time that we have had that a teacher has had an increased class size because of this, and I almost don't think it's fair, because I haven't done a good job of educating them, but I don't even know if that's feasible with the intensity of placing 75 students over 7 elementary buildings in such a time crunch that I can have that dialogue with the teachers, but I don't know that they have all the data to even answer that question
Okay.
for their grade level, if that makes sense.
Okay, and I would just like to kind of reiterate what Steve was saying about dialing it back. I would like to, I don't want to keep depending on this, and I definitely don't want to increase it in the future. I'd like us to focus more on bringing in these Clarkston virtual, construction tech kids, CSM tech kids, and also just having innovative programs that are bringing kids to Clarkston and gaining our enrollment that way instead of relying on school of choice. I just don't think school of choice in general in our community is wanted.
Yeah, and we can look, our intent was really to look at bringing it back, and then we started looking at the projections. So, I mean, our goal is to be flat. We like where we're at, we like our number of sections. I mean, that is the intent of this program, not to increase our enrollment. It's to stop losing the enrollment so we can keep the programs, the IB, the CSM Tech, the band, all of these programs, so we have enough students to take all the different languages we offer and so forth. Because that is becoming challenging when you got middle school that used to have 1,300 kids that's now at 900.
President Need, I would wholeheartedly like to express how much these school of choice children help benefit the rest of the students in this district by expanding the offerings of the programs you just spoke of. Because the likelihood is if all these school of choice children were not in our district, many of these programs would no longer exist. And I think that's an important thing that our community needs to be educated about. I'm extremely proud to see that their achievement numbers are what they are, because that is not the perception in this community. We need to do a much better job of telling this story. My own grandchild is one of those students, and I can tell you her achievement is above the average in her class. So I think that we need to educate our teaching staff better about what these children bring to our school district and our community, because these numbers help provide the services and the opportunities that we give to our students that they would not get otherwise. And I think that's a very important story that we need to make sure we start telling.
Thank you, Mrs. McGinnis.
Just one more thing
Mr.
to
Heyer.
add, Mr. Need. I guess I would challenge Dr. Ryan and Mr. Lucido when we're sitting here in January or February a year from now and we're having a similar kind of conversation. You know, I would pose like, what else is there, right? Like as I look at the numbers and the environment that we're in, you know, how do we, you know, is it maintaining more of our students? You know, my sense is they probably move out of the community, and that's probably a hard thing to do. You know, do we increase our birth capture rate? Like, how do we do that? What does that look like? I'm not sure we could increase the number of births. You know, we'd have to rewind 5 years or so. But there's only so many ways we can affect these numbers. And my challenge would be like, what else is there, right? Like we have this, we don't love it, we understand the function, it's doing what we said it was going to do. I worry about the long-term effects as we go through the whole piece, but are there other ways where we can pick up, you know, hey, if we just do this thing over here, we can get 5 more kids here, 5 more kids, you know, that are our own kids back in our buildings. What does that look like? You know, and so if we've got a year to think about that, I'd love to explore, you know, some of those other options that might be out there, whether that's marketing, you know, communications, like how do we let people know what we have going on here and why this might be a good fit for their kid if their kid is, you know, is in any of these programs that we have. You know, let's look at some of those things as well.
Thank you, Mr. Heyer.
Have we noticed any loss of students based on people pulling them out of the school district, not just the lower birth rate? Because I know out there's a lot of people that are pulling their kids and doing homeschools. I know it's a growing trend. And are we losing any from that?
Yeah.
And what could we do to possibly pull those kids back in? And that could be something that maybe the school's heading in a direction that some of the parents don't want it to go, and that's probably why they're doing it. Have we looked into any of that research at all?
Mr. Lucido, can you address that,
We
please?
do. I don't have it with me to pull up for you, but I can certainly share that with you. We have graphed that out for the last 10 years. COVID is up. You'll see some big spikes, but other than that, it's pretty...
Yeah, we'll take that off.
Pretty
We got some great
insignificant.
data for that.
Yeah.
We present it every year as an ongoing story to the board. It's a great question. We can, part of your orientation piece, we'll pull that all in there. We'll just share that
Yes.
presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything
You know,
else?
another little fun, you know,
Dr.
looking
Ryan.
at the fact, sorry,
No,
just,
that's fine.
you know, of programming, seeing that these are highly able learners that are going to backfill into our CSM Tech, our marching band, and all of our other programs that keep them vibrant. Mr. Lucido, I think it was in the fall, we were kicking around looking at our lost students and just for our own, you know, bizarre interest of charting if we would have done this instead of that, and if we wouldn't have been trying to augment and try to bring a stabilization enrollment. I think we were looking at next year, the year after, closing one of our elementaries. So then it's real. You know, you look at the cost there, because those are the students that have been backfilling the middle school and everything else. It's not a fear thing. It's more of just the reality of our situation. When we, at point not too long ago, we're at 8,200, and then based on birth rate, the entire county, you know, scooting down that piece. And having the privilege of being a mid-cap school district in the state of Michigan, you know, we have power of numbers. And that means that, you know, that offerings that we can have that you don't see in a lot of schools. And it's funny, I'm glad that our community takes that. I'm not saying they take it for granted. It's an expectation that we have all these offers, that we have the most AP classes in Oakland County. We do that because we need actual kids in those classes taking them. Kids that learn, that are capable and can kind of carry the bar and add to the fabric of the school district. And I think that's our goal. But I really appreciate, that look, that it has to be under scrutiny, and you had to look at the idea. The other conversation you had is we were looking at if we were going to be this much up, then we were going to back off this much. It's almost like falling insurance numbers from year to year to get that balance. But we'll continue to look at those programmings, like Ms. Love suggested, in a broader way to look for attraction. That's been a tough sell over the last 20 years. I can remember when 2 superintendents ago that we actually brought CSM Tech from the county, and it was going to be the big thing that we attracted in thousands of kids. And it was a nice move for Clarkston students, but for whatever reason, a lot of people, whether it's because they're friends, their neighborhood, however, tend to like to stay closer to home. So that being said, I'm sorry, Ms. Speed, is there anything else you want to add in there?
Nope. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lucido. Appreciate all the information. And thank you, everybody, for your comments. Item 9 is the second opportunity for citizens to address the board on any topic. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board? Please come to the podium and give us your name and address, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jackson McNaughton. Regarding the school resource officers, I think that it's important to notice that there's only a limited amount of money between the school district and the Independence Township, and if one of those organizations is going to have to pay more for something, that means some part of those budgets is going to be reduced for some other use. So I think that the discussion should be based around, are we going to reduce what we have within the schools, or are we going to reduce what we have within the functions of Independence Township? Because the fact of the matter is, it would be very difficult to limit those increases in prices, but those costs have to go somewhere. And that, I guess, in that context is how we would look at apportioning the increasing costs between the school district and the Independence Township. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNaughton. I appreciate that. Any other citizens? Yes. Mr. Rogers. Welcome.
Beth Rogers, 7165 Hogback Lake Road, Davisburg. Also the president of the CEA. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here. I just wanted to address teachers and their feelings towards school of choice students. I will tell you that most of your staff don't know who your school of choice students are. I don't look up my students' addresses. They're just my students. And all of the students that walk through our doors are Clarkston students. We love them equally. We educate them equally. I know from time to time it comes up where teachers will make that commentary, but the vast majority of us love and educate our students because they're all Clarkston students. We thank you. We thank you, Mr. Lucido, for the work that you've done to help stabilize our district, and we will always be here to support you and our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Appreciate that. Any other comments from the public? Okay, item 10, we'll move on to information items. We had 3 of our board members attend an education conference in Washington, D.C. this last weekend, and I would ask Mrs. Crane to give us a brief summary of what they did and what they learned.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Love, Mr. Heyer, and I were in Washington, D.C. for almost a week. We attended a conference, an advocacy conference, where we had keynote speakers, breakout clinic sessions. We were busy from morning till night. At night, we met to talk over our key talking points that we would use to go onto the Hill, which we did for 2 days. And during that time, we met with senators, congressmen, people on both sides of the aisle, the majority, the minority. We advocated for public education. I think Mr. Heyer has, he said that he has been to Washington DC, I think between this and, is it Student Association for STEM Advocacy? This was his 51st trip for advocating in Washington DC. So he is an amazing guide, and he works tirelessly to set up meetings, which he then sent me Mrs. Love and I, the itinerary for, and it was exhausting just reading it. However, we made it through, and my point in that is that he said that this was my third time going. The first was right after COVID, which was very strange. You couldn't get close to people. You were wearing masks. The second year was a little better. This year, I think, Mr. Heyer, you said felt like normal. Mm-hmm. And I would say, I mean, it felt like you were just talking to people. No matter who you were sitting in front of, you were just talking to people. So I will say that both sides of the aisle both said, yes, things are chaotic right now. We know that. They gave us all the assurances that they could, that they felt like funding formulas were safe in our arena. So that was kind of what we took out of it. And I think that we'll keep trying, keep advocating. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Crane. Anybody want to add from?
Did we start at 7:30 in the morning? You said we started early in the morning. Was that the time?
Some days, yes.
Just a point of clarification that I would add is my primary responsibility on this trip was representing Michigan Association of School Boards. Happy to collaborate and support our Clarkston board as well, and certainly speak on behalf of Clarkston there, but that was my primary role on this trip.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heyer. And I think most of those 51 trips were through the Michigan Association of School Boards, correct?
A lot of them.
Yeah.
Did anybody get a check for IDEA?
Yes, they gave it. They just posted like 20 years in the future.
Okay, some upcoming items. This Wednesday, February 12th, at the High School Performing Arts Center is the Young Fives and Kindergarten Information Night. As Dr. Ryan mentioned, our midwinter break is next Monday and Tuesday. No school for students and staff. School resumes Wednesday the 19th. Our next Board of Education meeting is Monday, February 24th. We are going to have a workshop on secondary math initiatives, and then our regular board meeting is Monday, March 10th at 7 p.m. Item 11 is adjournment. May I have a motion, please?
Move to adjourn.
Support.
Motion is made and supported. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.